Finished the first lecture that was about the female hormones. We did different characteristics biochemically, physiologically. We saw the regulation also, and that was the point where we finished. Today the second lecture is the pivotal lecture, a very, very important lecture which needs a complete understanding so that you can apply and use this information in the tutorial and in the forthcoming lectures. The next few lectures will be helped by this lecture, but you need to understand it very well. There are several concepts that we will introduce in this lecture, and female reproduction understanding depends on the understanding of these cycles, the ovarian and menstrual cycle. Okay, I'd like to start with the first slide, and generally speaking, we know about the word menstrual cycle because we have gone through it previously. One of the biological rhythms which a growing female develops when she passes puberty from the girl stage to the pubertal stage, okay, as the onset of puberty is there, a specific rhythm starts. We are saying it a rhythm because it's a repetition, you know that, okay? It's a periodic repetition which is happening at specific intervals, so we call it rhythm, okay? If I give you the classification based on your previous information of rhythms, what kind of rhythm will it be? Well, yes, in most of the females it is a regular, it is repeated at regular intervals, fairly regular intervals, so it's a rhythmic cycle. But if you remember the classification of the biological rhythms, which I think we discussed earlier also, can you recall what kind of rhythm was that? One rhythm was the circadian rhythm. Do you remember that? Is it a circadian rhythm? No, it's not. Okay, it is not repeated after 24 hours. Do you know that? So if it is not, then what could be the other possibility? One other rhythm type that we discussed was ultradian rhythm. Any idea about the ultradian rhythm? No? No idea? Maybe it is not discussed with you. Maybe, because I think with your class it was not discussed. So it's a good time to discuss. See, circadian rhythm, any idea about the circadian rhythm, because you have done endocrinology?
Every 24 hours.
24 hours, that's good. Okay. If a rhythm is repeated less than 24 hours, it has a special name, a separate name. If a rhythm is repeated and the time duration is more than 24 hours, it has a special name. Okay. What do you think about this rhythm? Is it repeated in less than 24 hours or more than 24 hours? Obviously, it is coming every 28 days. It's a difference of days really, or 30 days, or 25 days, or 32 days. It depends really on females, but it is repeated in a specific fashion. Okay? So this biological rhythm has a specific name, and this kind of rhythm is known as the infradian rhythm, I-N-F-R-A-D-I-A, an infradian rhythm. Okay? It is repeated after a specific interval which is more than 24 hours. Okay, so this is a striking example of this kind of rhythm which is repeated in human beings. You don't see in males this kind of rhythm. Okay, we don't have any rhythm in us. You may have ultradian rhythms which are repeated less than 24 hours. For example, sleep, when we sleep. Our sleep occurs in cycles. One cycle of 90 minutes, then the second cycle starts, then the third cycle starts, okay? So every cycle has 90 minutes. If we are sleeping for 6 hours, 90 minutes, 90 minutes, 90 minutes and 90 minutes, okay? So in one night, if we are sleeping for 6 hours, how many cycles? 4 cycles. And each cycle has a duration of 90 means 1.5 hours. Is it less than 24 hours or more than 24 hours? But this is repeated in a fashion of rhythm, isn't it? Okay. This kind of rhythm is called the ultradian rhythm. Okay, that is the sleep example. But let's keep it away. This special rhythm, biological rhythm in females, which is perfectly physiological, is the onset of the puberty, one of the signs of the onset of puberty. This cycle is a very important expression of female maturation, that the female has matured physically and she is sexually capable of performing the function of reproduction. So there are specific changes which are happening in this cycle, and these changes are repeated and seen definitely in every cycle. Every month or less than a month or more than a month, females have the cycle. And the same way cycle is repeated again, having the same phases, and it's going again and again and again like this, and it continues. It's a long time. It starts from puberty, isn't it? Menarche, the first cycle. And then it goes on and on and on over the reproductive years of the female life. Now the reproductive years are, if you count the years, a female maturing at the age of 12 or 13 years, usually 12, 13, 12, 13, 12, 13, 14. This is the age where the female matures. Some at 12, some at 13, some maybe at 14, some maybe at a very early age of 11 also. So it depends really, but 12, 13 is usually a common age. If it is so, and it starts going on and continues over years and years, and it goes to the menopause. I think we are comfortable with the word menopause also, okay, where the cycles cease, they stop. And that is about 45 years plus minus, usually between 45 and 50 years somewhere, okay. Not lazim that it's 45 years exactly, maybe 45, 46, 48, 49, 50, any time it can, okay. So if you count the years roughly between 12 years and 45 years, how many years will there be? 30? Okay. 35 to 40 years are definitely there in a female life when she is reproductive, having a capability of reproduction, or she is reproductive. She has the cycle almost every month. Cycle continue in a fairly regular fashion. There may be some problems in the cycle sometimes. The cycles can stop also, okay, under some physiological conditions. What are these physiological conditions? Pregnancy, and what could be the other possibility when the cycles can stop? Everything is going normally. She is perfectly normal. Pregnancy is a normal phase. Okay, one thing is pregnancy, you're right. What else? And? Medication. Well, if you are using medication, then it is not physiological, okay. It will be a pharmacological implication, okay. It will be pharmacological, because if you are trying to stop the cycle by using medication or as a side effect of medication, then the problem will be different, okay.
Sir,
yeah. The question is, what is the other physiological possibility where the cycles can stop? No, between menarche and menopause, okay. Menarche, before menarche, no cycle physiologically. After menopause, yes. Breastfeeding or lactation, usually in the first phase of lactation for a couple of months, cycles are usually not started. They are not there. Then maybe with the lactation also, cycles can restart. Cycle restarting means fertility is coming back again. In every cycle, usually there is ovulation, isn't it? If there is ovulation, then fertility is there. We suppose that fertility is there, and the female can become pregnant or she can conceive. All right? So, pregnancy and lactation are the phases, and sometimes there may be other problems without any disease when the females are under stress, physiological stress, some kind of anxiety or stress. The hormones are disturbed from the hypothalamus and pituitary, and therefore the cycles are disturbed. For example, students, when they are in the phase of exams, many females have problems, disturbances of the cycle when they are in phase of exam, okay? Because some of us take exam very seriously, even males really, but we don't have any function where we have a disturbance like that. Females express this and their cycles sometimes become delayed, or sometimes they can stop for 1 month or so and then again recontinue. It happens, okay? So physiologically, stresses can also cause problems, okay, without any disease. Perfectly normal female, okay, there is no problem. So otherwise cycles are there throughout the reproductive years, imagine, okay. It's a wonderful function of the reproductive system, which is giving fertility, which is giving the chance to conceive and to bear the child, okay. The female sexual cycle, okay, commonly known as the menstrual cycle, okay, but the word is female sexual cycle because it's a very well coordinated sequence of 2 cycles which are going together. One cycle is going on in the ovaries, and you will call it ovarian cycle. Side by side, following the events of the ovarian cycle, another cycle is following, but that cycle is expressed in the uterus, and you call it the uterine cycle. Because in the uterine cycle, you have a phase of menstruation or bleeding which is visible from outside. Well, ovarian cycle, nothing is visible. Can you see ovulation? You cannot see. Can a female feel ovulation? No, she cannot. She cannot, okay. There are some indicators of ovulation, but personally, as a subjective feeling, the female cannot understand about what is the exact time of ovulation. It passes silently, it passes simply. So the only visible evidence, only expression, external evidence of this cycle, that female is having the normal cycle, is the phase of bleeding. When the bleeding starts periodically, say, okay, now it is a perfect phase of the cycle. It will again come after 1 month or 28 days. Okay, that is okay. So it means everything is going normally, okay. So we are now considering 2 cycles which are going together side by side: ovarian cycle in the ovaries and the uterine cycle in the uterus. You can also call it menstrual cycle. Sometimes loosely we call the complete cycle as the menstrual cycle, but let us keep it separately into 2 components: the ovarian cycle and the menstrual cycle, which is uterine cycle, okay. Together it's the female sexual cycle involving both organs, ovaries and uterus, okay. So we'll focus the cycles one by one because it needs a lot of understanding, okay. I would have loved to show you this animation. Somehow it is not working. I have got 2 animations, but it's not working here. I'll try to send this one to Abdullah separately if I have it in my computer, because it's very nice, okay. This animated expression is very nice. The menstrual cycle, the normal menstrual cycle, I'm using a general word. Actually, the female sexual cycle is divided into 2 phases. Okay, one cycle is specifically the ovarian cycle and the other cycle is the uterine cycle. By uterine, you will clearly understand we are focusing now the uterus, the changes, structural changes which are happening in the uterus, the functional changes which are happening in the uterus. Okay, in ovarian cycle, okay, we'll first look at the ovaries, what is happening in the ovaries, both structurally, developmentally and functionally, right? Okay. So let us start the ovarian cycle. We are beginning. Be careful now. We'll begin our journey from very early life and you have to stay with me from that point. But before that, let us first of all distinguish and try to understand the names of the phases of the cycle, which is very easy because you know a very specific event, a result of this cycle, which is called ovulation or released of an ovum. Okay, you know, in every cycle, ovarian cycle, a point comes when there is a release of an ovum, and this is essential. If ovum is not released, it will not go into the uterus. If it doesn't go into the uterus, there is no chance of fertility. Okay, it's purposeless really. Okay? So the conception can never occur and the pregnancy will not happen. Ovulation is a specific event which is happening in the cycle. Ovulation is a release only. As it is released, khalas, ovulation is done. It means ovulation. Is ovulation a phase of cycle or an event? What will you call it? It's an event. This event is dividing the cycle into two parts. One part of the cycle is before, and one part of the cycle is after ovulation. Okay? If you are using ovulation as the reference point, your reference point is ovulation somewhere in the middle of the cycle, taqriban. Okay? It's the middle of the cycle. If ovulation is in the middle of the cycle, then there will be a phase before the ovulation, a time period, and a time period after the ovulation. So you are dividing your ovarian cycle in female into two distinct phases. By which line? The line is ovulation. And ovulation itself is not a phase. It's a momentary event which is happening. It takes few moments only and it is done. All right? So logically speaking, if a phase is present before ovulation, what will you call it without knowing its name? Before. It's pre. Okay? And one phase is after, post. So simple thing is pre-ovulatory phase and the post-ovulatory phase. This is the first point of clarification that we need. Are we clear about that? Okay. The pre-ovulatory phase is a phase in which the follicle, I think you are comfortable with the term follicle also because you have done it in the embryology and possibly in anatomy also, isn't it? So histology or embryology gives you some idea about the follicle. Because the follicles, they start growing and then they rupture and ovulation occurs and they are transformed into some other structure. Okay? Now, before ovulation, because the follicle is growing and the whole event is around the whole phase is around the development of the follicle, the name of the phase can also be follicular phase. So it's very easy. The pre-ovulatory phase or the follicular phase. Okay? Now you come after. Post-ovulatory phase, after ovulation, and in that phase a specific structure develops, transformation happens, and everyone knows it's very mashhoor. It's called corpus luteum. So from that we can call it, so it's easy. I think so far it is not difficult. Okay? Everything is going step by step and in a logical fashion. Okay? Any problem so far? Okay. Now, we will begin with the first phase of understanding, and that phase is the development of the follicle. We are in the follicular phase, which is a pre-ovulatory phase. Okay? Let us pick the story from the very beginning. The process of development of the follicle, again, has a biological name. You can see the name very easily. Folliculogenesis. Genesis means development. Okay? In a specific way. So folliculogenesis is happening from a very tiny follicle, a microscopic follicle. You can form a macroscopic follicle when it is completely mature, fully developed, before giving you the process of ovulation. Okay, it becomes, okay, so from a dot, okay, from a nukta really, it becomes like kurratul qadam. Okay, it changes. So this is the transformation which is happening. You can imagine. Size is attained, a specific size, a big size is attained, and all the requirements are met, and once it is ready, it will rupture by a special mechanism. Okay? Now, look at the diagram which is given here. Have a look at the diagram and try to figure out the different phases from the left side to the right side of the diagram. You are starting with very small structures. Maybe the angle is not good for all of you, but you are starting from very small cyst-like structures which are there, okay, in the diagram, and then you have small, isolated, separate, rounded ball-like structures. The starting point, you call it the primordial follicle, okay. Then you see another name, that primordial follicle is going through the stages, the ibtidai stage and the sanvi stage, you can say the primary and the secondary phases, and then it passes into a specific, a very well distinguished phase called the antral phase or the antral follicle. And then after entrical follicle is developed, it further grows, and just before ovulation it becomes big. It's known as the pre-ovulatory follicle, and then it becomes final exactly before, and that pre-ovulatory follicle is transformed when it is completely ready. You call it the Graafian follicle. Sometimes pre-ovulatory follicle is also called the Graafian follicle. Sometimes it matures more and becomes the final stage before rupture, and at that point it is known as the Graafian follicle, okay. Anyway, so stages are there, and after that ovulation happens, okay. After ovulation, still the residual mass is left. Some of the cells, some structure is left in the follicle because ovum has left. Along with some cells, it is gone. Now you are left with a mass, okay, a jelly-like mass which is now transforming of the cells. It changes, becoming fatty, and it develops a specific body or a structure. You know the name, we discussed that, corpus luteum, okay. So this is the fate of the follicle, okay, starting from the germ cell cyst. Now we are going very primitive. We are starting our story very, very early, and let us see. We are starting the story before the birth of the female, okay. We are in the fetal life. We are in the embryonic period. We are somewhere in the 6th and 8th week of the embryonic life, very early. Embryo, not even fetus now, okay. It's a very early. Embryogenesis is going on. All the organs are developing in the female baby, which is an embryo, and at the same time ovaries are also developing, and inside the ovaries there is differentiation of the cells which is happening, and division is going on. In this division, the germ cells, the primitive germ cells, they are formed in the clusters, and these clusters are forming the different shapes of cells, 10 cells, 20 cells, 6, 8, 9, 10 cells, and these cells are joined together. The walls are joined together. Then some of the cells in between them die, okay. If some of the cells die, then that cluster becomes broken. If more cells die, the cells are separated. You can see the green color is separating. The green color is separating, and it is giving you some cells here and there. So finally, when the cells are dying and the cells are dividing, you have the separation, and some masses are formed, okay. First of all, this kind of mass is formed, and then you will see that around the masses, the surrounding cells, the mesenchymal cells and the epithelial cells, they gather, okay, as a group. Then finally you have the separation of the cells, and around each cell, okay, which is a germ cell, okay, the future germ cell, you will have some cells coming, the flattened cells, a layer of cells is formed, and that is a covering layer. Now this is done, okay. Once it is done, these structures are preserved in the ovaries, okay. You are in the very early part of the embryonic life. It's about like 6 to 8 weeks, we are saying. And what is the number? Well, immense number really, okay. It's in millions. It's not 1, 2, 3, 4 millions, about 6 to 7 millions around the time of like middle of the pregnancy, 20th week or so. The total number that has been attained after division of the cells is about like 6 to 7 millions in 2 ovaries, okay. In the fetal, now female fetus, 2 ovaries, 6 to 7 millions ova, the primitive ova. What is the structure? A single cell surrounded by a flat epithelial covering layers, the future granulosa cells, okay? And these are now ready in the ovaries, okay? The job has started before the birth of the baby. Now these cells are, after this time, the cells are dying also at the same time, okay? As the female fetus is growing and growing, now from 6 to 7 millions, the number will start decreasing, okay? So the number will decrease. A special point about the primordial follicle, this is the primordial follicle that is developed now. I was telling you the story of the germ cell cyst, how the cysts are formed, multiple cells, and how the separate cells are formed. Once you form the separate cell, the ovum, covered by a layer of the granulosa cells or the flat epithelial cells, okay? In fact, the future granulosa cells, this structure is called the primordial follicles. So it means primordial follicles are present before birth, okay? They are very high in number before birth, and we'll see what happens at the time of birth. The primordial follicles, after their formation, they pass into the meiotic division. You know, the germ cells, the male or female cells, they undergo a specific division process, and that division process is not mitosis, okay? That is meiosis. If they want to develop into the haploid cells or special germ cells, the final cells, they have to undergo meiosis process. The meiosis is starting, please, the meiosis is starting before birth. Meiosis has meiosis 1 and meiosis 2. There are two phases, okay? You have some steps of meiosis 1. When it finishes, it will go into meiosis 2. In the fetal life, meiosis 1 starts. Please, meiosis 1 is starting, but meiosis 1 never finishes in the fetal life. Very strange. There are different phases. Prophase, anaphase, metaphase, telophase. You know that the phases are there, okay? The prophase is going on in the meiosis 1, and all of a sudden everything freezes and it stops, okay? Why does it stop? We are not sure about that. Some kind of a genetic code or a genetic message is there, and in every primordial follicle, as the prophase has started and it is going on, in the prophase it stops. So you have frozen something, you have kept it in thalaja really, okay? So it is like the freeze, and it stops in the prophase. Now this will again restart after birth when the puberty will come. So imagine the fetal life where the prophase freezes and all the primordial follicles are in the prophase of meiosis 1, and then they stop, okay?
Doctor,
Yeah.
puberty,
Yes.
does it continue or restart from the beginning again?
No. From where it was left, prophase, for example, if you have taken something out from thalaja and you keep it outside, and again it will become normal and it will start from there, just like that, okay? So you'll not have to start from zero, you'll start from the same point where it stopped. Okay. So you got the idea of the primordial follicle, you got the characteristic that because of a genetic timing and switching, it stops in the prophase of meiosis 1 or meiosis 2? 1. Forget about 2. 2 will happen late. I'll tell you when it happens exactly. Alright? So far, is it clear? What happens in the embryonic and the fetal life? Okay. Alright. Now, a very important point. At the time of Vilada, it will remain the same, frozen, because it will restart in puberty. But at that time, there is a genetic coding, probably, we are not sure about that, there is a genetic coding which is there, genetic switching off and switching on. Switch off is there, you have closed it really, okay? When will this primordial follicle switch on again? Maybe this is also decided, a very interesting point. Now, the re-switching or restarting of meiosis will start from puberty, but the question is, will all the primordial follicles start prophase again at the same time as the female reaches puberty? No. No. Okay? In the first cycle, when the first cycle starts, some follicles from here, from this ovary, and some follicles from this ovary, they will be used up. 5 to 10 from here, or 5 to 6, 5 to 10 from here. Total 10, 15 follicles from each. Okay? Total 10 to 15 follicles, 5 to 10 from each ovaries. They start growing and they are used up. Okay? Only one will go finally into ovulation, others will be wasted. But they grow at the same time. So, what will happen? They will go into the prophase. Okay? Then the next cycle, the second cycle will come after 1 month taqriban. Okay? Then the new 5 to 10 from here and 5 to 10 from here, they will start and they will restart their prophase and they will go this process. Okay? And then the third one. So what do you think? Every month, some of the follicles will grow up and use. Okay? And they will start the re-switching. It means this process